Joy Drive on Joy 94.9 FM in Melbourne, Joy on your digital radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn.com or the Joy app. No matter where you are, you can always take Em and Warren with you.
It is 18 minutes past 4 on Joy Drive.
How often have you heard the term work-life balance? Now that working at home has become the new normal for at least some of the time, the line between work and home has become quite blurred. How do we shut off at the end of the day, and how do we avoid burnout in such a rapidly changing work environment? Dr. Melissa Wheeler is a senior lecturer in management from Swinburne University of Technology. Melissa, welcome to Joy Drive.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, work-life balance, is that still a term that's as relevant today as it has been as in the past?
Well, it's certainly a term that we still see a lot, especially during this work from time, remote working COVID days. But I'd like to introduce a new term that I've just come across as well called work-life blend.
Oh.
So the difference between balance and blend that we're seeing is people who want balance kind of want that segmentation. They want boundaries between when they're working and when they're at doing family, home, or community kind of stuff. Now, blend is a little bit different, and it may suit the workplace of today, where we're often working from the place that we live and the place that we engage with our family. So there's not so much of a segment, or there's more of a blurring between when you're working and when you're engaging at things that you need to do for your family.
So, Melissa, does that blurring, though, doesn't that mean, though, it's become more difficult to shut off at the end of the day?
I would say that it's different for different people, and I think that's what I've been finding in reading a lot of the research and even engaging in some of this research myself. The important thing is to ask yourself, are you a segmenter or are you an integrator? So you may be a segmenter if you feel a little bit burnt out at the end of the day and you need to completely switch off, or maybe it's that you have a young family and you want to really be there for them. That might make you a segmenter. But if you enjoy having a hike in the middle of the day and you realize that you can make up for work at another time, or maybe you can take calls when you're on a walk, maybe you prefer to do the best part of your writing or the most cognitive thing at the end of the day. So you might be an integrator, finding those times when slipping in and out works best for you.
Melissa, what are some of the common mistakes organisations and employers are making in this changing work environment that could be having a negative impact on their workers?
I'd say from the employer point of view, and especially maybe from a leadership point of view, assuming that other people know the kind of work and flexible work that you want to have, not communicating your expectations of what people should expect of you and what you might expect of other people. So if I'm the kind of person who wants to respond to emails, if I wake up at 3 a.m. and can't sleep, well, if I don't communicate to people who are answering to me that, that's just the way I want to work, I don't expect you to wake up and respond to an email if you hear a ping. So it's really about getting those expectations communicated and keeping that communication up. And I think from the employee point of view, responding too quickly can set a norm that you can't sustain. So if you're on that always-on culture and you hear that ping and you want to respond to that email, I would actually recommend taking a breath, even doing some, don't stop what you're doing. Turn your emails off while you're concentrating. Because the quicker that we keep responding, that's setting the norm that's always how you're going to respond. And that just doesn't seem sustainable if we're going to continue in the way that we're working.
Melissa, since a lot of people are working from home, at least some of the time still post-pandemic, there's been a lot of monitoring happening and a lot of stuff online about people, getting mouse movers and things to make sure that their productivity looks like it should online. Do you think that constant monitoring has a negative effect on workers as well?
That's a great question, and I was going to put that in my list of common mistakes when you asked as well, this over-surveillance. Mm-hmm. What is it signaling when you're doing these kind of surveillance of employees who are working from home? The first thing it signals is that you don't trust them, And the second thing it signals is that you don't value flexible work in the way that it's often touted or it's often described by employers. So, when employees start to feel that lack of trust, they're going to start disengaging, looking for other work, maybe, and when I say disengaging, sometimes wasting time on purpose to make it look like things take longer so that the expectation is that they do take longer. So, with the new technological advancements that we have in AI and all these kinds of surveillance techniques when people are working remotely, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing what you hope that they're doing.
We're chatting with Dr. Melissa Wheeler about how to survive constant change at work now that we're working from home more. Melissa, we spoke earlier about the being a segmenter or an integrator. I'm interested to find out if we are constantly reminded about work, even if we're preparing the dinner or we're sitting at home on the couch with the kids, whatever we're doing, our email bings in the background. We've got these constant reminders. How do we stop them from causing a burnout scenario to happen?
Well, some of the tips that I've been talking with other people who specialize in this area about, and a lot of the reading that I've been doing, there's a couple of quick tips that you could do to try to shut off. And one would be to tidy up your desk, clean up your desktop, turn off your computer and monitor, and if you have a room designated to be your workspace at home, even close the door. Turning off the notifications on your phone is probably the most important one, although don't ask me because even though I've turned them off, I still find myself opening the app when I'm bored and having a look at my emails, so I'm working on that as something I'm doing for myself. And I mentioned this a little bit before, but I'm going to say it again, that communicating your expectations is probably one of the most important things for turning off, because if you're the kind of person who needs to shut off at night, and probably most of us are to some extent, then as long as that's communicated within your team and they know what to expect of you, then it won't feel like you're always behind or that people are always waiting for you. They're just going to have to learn to wait a little bit.
I know I've been guilty in the past, Melissa, of a particular boss that I had would send me emails overnight, and I felt like I had to get up at 4 a.m. to respond to them because otherwise, I'd be judged as being a poor worker. Whereas now, if I was in that scenario, I think I'd say, look, you know what, I'm not going to respond to your emails overnight. So, but
and I wonder if you had a chat about it too, they may have never expected you to have.
And that's exactly right. And I think some of us, sometimes we're guilty of making those assumptions, aren't we? That to be a good and valuable employee, we need to meet these expectations, but they're not necessarily put upon us.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And keeping that communication up is one way to keep us all on the same page.
So how should we view failure in the workplace? How should our employers react to it if we do something wrong?
Yeah, so we've been talking a little bit about work-life balance and flexible work and that kind of setup. And one of the things that, even in the kind of conversations we had about surveillance, it was about this, a culture where you feel trusted, where you feel like you can bring something up, you can challenge something that's always been done, you can challenge your leaders or even ask, is this the best way to do this? And all of those things are from a learning perspective, and they build on this idea of growth mindsets. And growth mindsets are when you see failure as an opportunity to learn more. So some people might see failure as being shut down and feel very disempowered and not wanting to go on. But if you can shift that way of thinking, and if you're in an environment where it's safe to have these discussions about your failures with your manager, with your team, then you're more likely to want to talk about them, to be almost have a sense of excitement over, nobody wants to feel failure, but there is always that opportunity to find things that you'd never thought about by asking other people or going to different sources, even looking at an evidence-based perspective and trying things out, seeing what works and what doesn't. And it's okay to try them out if you know that next failure is going to be an opportunity and not a source of punishment.
Fantastic. And all of this advice is really quite wonderful. The idea of setting boundaries seems really important, and not feeling guilty about it would also be great. So, Melissa, thank you so much for chatting with us on Joy Drive.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks. That's Dr. Melissa Wheeler, Senior Lecturer in Management from Swinburne University of Technology.
28 minutes past 4, news headlines up next.